Welcome to the first meeting of the Communities Committee this year. Claire, can you give us a Sederunt apologies, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. We've got 15 members present this morning. 3 apologies being from Councillors Davison, Marshall and Wood. 3 members currently not present being Councillor Ian Carruthers, Councillor Ingalls and Councillor Dempster.
Andrew?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor David Ingalls is in apologies, and Councillor Carruthers will be along shortly.
Thank you.
Councillor Dempster's wife's just out of hospital, so I take it he'll not be along today.
Right. Thank you. Have we any declarations of interest? No. In that case, we'll go to the meeting of the 8th of November. Governors are telling me that this needs to be agreed today, not noted, because it didn't go to full council last time. So that's the proper governance process for this paper. So are we happy to agree the minute? Thank you very much. Okay, let's move on to item 4, the Strategic Housing Investment Plan. Report by the Head of Customer Services. The purpose of this report is to seek members' agreement for 2 new projects to be included in the Council's Strategic Housing Investment Plan, and also to provide an update regarding the Council's National Housing Trust initiative. As members are aware, during the next 3 years, this Council will deliver new affordable housing with funding of over £60 million. It is therefore reassuring that we remain on target for this funding to be fully utilised. I've got Jamie Little here to take any questions, and Jim O'Neill. So, I'm just minded to go straight to questions. Jim, are you okay with that? Jamie? Yeah. Thank you. Questions? Jane?
Yes, it's just about the Gretna one, about putting it into the SHIP now, bearing in mind it's such a long-term housing site. And I'm not absolutely certain whether it's phase 1 or phase 2. I'm really sorry. I can't remember. And I'm not peering at my phone at it rudely. It's just that it's in my phone. There are 2 phases, and I'm curious that we're putting it in so early. If there are, yes, GTN H7 phase 2 and GTN phase 1.
Jamie? Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, we've set out in the report that it's a long-term allocation in the local development plan. We've made that information quite clear to Cunningham Housing Association as well, who obviously at the time of proposing it to us were fully aware of that position. The reason from Cunningham for bringing it forward is they have developed they are developing the Halcrow Stadium site, which is an access point into this longer-term site. So they feel it is deliverable and that they can justify bringing it forward. We've also spoken with colleagues in strategic planning just to confirm exactly how Cunningham go about bringing that site forward for housing development sooner than the target date of current target date of 2024. So strategic planning are comfortable with this site being included in the strategic housing investment plan.
Thank you. Are you okay with that, Jane?
Yes, it just seems to me very curious that we've got an LDP that we've just had go through the whole process, and we're putting something in that doesn't immediately seem to comply with the LDP. Does that not sound odd?
No, I think it's long-term planning, isn't it? It's a long-term planning assumption, and surely the SHIP should be as flexible as we can possibly make it. It's a dynamic document. So we should be... I would suggest we should have over-provision rather than under-provision. Does that make sense?
If it is feasible.
Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. The draft local development plan actually has a policy that allows for long-term sites to be brought forward if appropriate justification can be made to do so. So it would be incumbent in Cunningham Housing Association to demonstrate why the site has been brought forward and complies with current policy. And as Jamie alluded to, they're fully aware that that is the current situation. The difficulty in Gretna is access to water supply, and that is the issue that's been addressed by Cunningham Housing Association in relation to this development. They've managed to secure water connections to take this one forward from Scottish Water, and that will form part of the justification to bring it forward.
Okay, Jane? Yep. Anyone else? No, in that case, then I'm just going to move on to the recommendations, where one has to agree to include the new sites contained in the report in the Strategic Housing Investment Plan, as outlined at paragraph 3.2. We happy to agree? Thank you. And 2, note that the Council has written to the Scottish Government to secure their agreement to fund the purchase by Loreburn Housing Association of the National Housing Trust properties from the allocated resource planning assumptions for this region. Are you happy with that? Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to item 5, the Town Centre Living Fund. Okay, the purpose of this report is to seek members' agreement of applications to the Council's £1 million Town Centre Living Fund. These projects will take forward proposals to increase the supply of new affordable housing in our town centres and support wider regeneration objectives. This will contribute to the delivery of the priorities and commitments set out in the Council Plan 2017-22. Jim O'Neill is here to take any questions on the report. Again, I'm minded to go straight to questions, unless Jim's got anything to add. So we'll go straight to questions. David?
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. Regular listeners to your programme will know that I like this idea of the Town Centre Living Fund, but I don't think it's working very well. And it is for the regular private user, neither transparent, clear, well-known, or user-friendly. And I could bring anecdotal evidence from people I know that have tried to get into it, but I don't have to today because we see it's the usual suspects of the more organised third sector that are again leveraging this fund. Could anything be done to make this easier for private monies to access?
Yep, thanks, Chair. Obviously, the Town Centre Living Fund is agreed through the Council's budget setting process, which will take place late February this year, and then that's followed by a report to Communities Committee that allows members to review the access criteria to the scheme. So it's likely that a report will be brought to a future committee that sets out the outcomes that have been delivered as a result of the current funding allocations, but also makes recommendations about how the scheme could be taken forward and what the qualifying criteria are. But ultimately, obviously, that's a member decision and will be guided by members at committee on that day.
Okay, Ian, then Adam, and then Jane.
Thank you, Chairman. It's in relation to the mid-steeple quarter. Can I ask how many properties that the mid-steeple quarter team actually own? I noticed with interest that there's is it 113 to 119 High Street is being auctioned on the 5th of February, and I think they've declared an interest in it. And in fact, they've actually announced a fundraising campaign for it, which won't come to fruition until several weeks after the auction. So I don't know how that's going to work. But what knowledge do you have about that?
Yep, thanks, Chair. The Council has already agreed to transfer the Baker's Oven building up next to the mid-steeple to Dumfries High Street Limited, and that asset transfer is in progress and is due to conclude soon. In terms of the buildings, they're at 113 and 117 High Street, and they've been there's been successful bids to the Scottish Government's Land Fund, the first stage feasibility stage, to help examine the feasibility of Dumfries High Street Limited taking ownership of those buildings. Now, they were in discussions with the owners of the buildings, which are in fact pension funds at the moment, and during the process of those discussions, they became aware that they are in fact going to be auctioned as you've described. So in response to that, Dumfries High Street Limited have launched a crowdfunding campaign to try and raise money to bid at the auction to take ownership of the buildings. The target amount of money they're looking to raise is £30,000. The reserve price, we believe, at auction for the two buildings is currently £1, though it is highly likely they'll go for a greater value than £1. But at the moment, their intention is to go to the auction to try and secure ownership of the buildings with the money that's raised through the crowdfunding appeal.
Chairman, if I can just come back.
Okay, do you want to come back?
Yeah,
in?
no, thank you for that explanation. Although if you do speak to them, I think their publicity shows it's 113 to 119 High Street. So they've always got the wrong address in.
Okay, I take that was a comment. Okay, Adam and then Jane.
Thanks, Chair. Just in the back of Councillor James's question, I just wondered, can we get it confirmed that actually on the transfer money that we're looking at today, just under 50% of that would indeed actually go to a private company to help us enable our objectives. I think it's important just to recognise that indeed working as an enabling council to ensure that our voluntary and third sector can help us to achieve our aims, but indeed we are working with those private providers as well.
Thanks, Chair. At the moment, the criteria for access to the Town Centre Living Fund doesn't allow applications from private sector organisations unless they're part of a Scottish Government funding initiative. Again, what I would say to members is that the criteria will be reviewed and a report will be brought back to a future meeting of this committee, and it's entirely up to members, the parameters they set for the scheme going forward. But at the moment, it's targeted in terms of private sector applications if they're part of a Scottish Government funding initiative.
Thank you. Jane?
Thanks very much. Yes, I thought it was a good point that Adam made there, that we are able to spread the jam, so to speak. The issue that I was going to check with, and I have actually managed to speak to the officers beforehand, is to confirm that, in particular in the oven project, that we are entirely on track with what was proposed to elected members with the business case originally. So I think we need to have assurance that we are totally on track with that, and it's exactly what you would have expected to have seen, because people need to know what has been garnered for the 100,000, and then this extra money. And the second point I wanted to make is that I'm very enthusiastic and would like to commend the St Bride's proposal, because this is an important building, Chairman, and I know from my own experience in Kirkcudbright that a church was converted, and on the back of that church there are flats and houses, and that's been a very successful project, and it's been running for some time in Kirkcudbright. So I do commend that proposal. But if I could have confirmation that we are absolutely on track.
Yep, thanks, Chair. Following the last member decision to allocate funding to the mid-steeple quarter, we put in place a regular series of meetings with the Stove to ensure that the money was being spent in line with the decisions previously made by members. We also require them to produce evidence of spend against the funding allocation that was made before we release funds to them, and that's a process that we've been following throughout the year. In terms of what's actually been delivered, there's been a wide range of community engagement activities in the town centre. For example, there's been a couple of community litter picks. There's been the establishment and set-up of Dumfries High Street Limited, which is the community ownership company that is looking to take forward the mid-steeple quarter project. There's been a membership drive to ensure that there's a wide range of representation within Dumfries High Street Limited. The asset transfer of the Baker's Oven has taken place. To enable that to take place, a business plan had to produce that was required to be assessed by the council to ensure that it was a responsible decision. So that business plan has been produced and has been submitted to the council as part of the asset transfer process. There was the development of a facade art project, and one of the principles there was that the art project could then be used in other buildings as and when they take ownership of them. So if anyone was in and around Dumfries High Street last winter, they would have seen the video project they had projected on the front of the building that allowed members of the public to be engaged in the work that was taking place. There's been successful bids to the Scottish Land Fund and funding secured as a result of the enabling funding that the council made last year. There's also been a successful funding bid to the Hollywood Trust that has resulted in a separate funding allocation being made to Dumfries High Street Limited. So I think that we can be relatively confident that the council is seeing a good return on its investment, and there's potentially further down the line access to multi-million pound sources of funding, either through private finance, the third sector, or Scottish Government funding. But we are confident that the previous allocation has been spent in line with the application that was made to this committee.
Okay, Jane. Yeah, thanks. David?
Thank you. Just anticipating there's every likelihood that these recommendations will go through. Just for the convenience of the clerk, I won't be supporting 223 on the grounds of its exclusivity, bordering on discrimination. Thank you.
Well, we're not at that stage yet, David. You can register. I try my best to actually do the business, and if that goes quickly, then it's because we're in agreement. But if you want to record your dissent when it comes to that time, or whatever the outcome of the deliberations are, that's your prerogative. Absolutely. Any other questions? I've got one comment. Is that myself and some council officers were invited to Dundee to see how they've regenerated and revitalised the city of Dundee. They were very clear. Whilst it's reaching fruition now, right, it's a result of about 20 years of hard work. Right? Regenerating town centres isn't something that's going to happen tomorrow. Right? It has to be worked at. And what they've built it on up there was the use of the arts as a draw to get people in. It's interesting that the project we're talking about, most of this discussion about, has just done exactly that, right? And some of the buzz going about the town created by this project. So I think the other thing I would just say before we get the recommendations is that your comments across the room here on the private sector not being included in this at this moment in time isn't lost on the officers or myself and John, and I'm sure they will be taken into account when the review comes round, because nothing's ever perfect. There's always room for improvement in everything we do. So, but that is a future report to this committee. Am I right, Jim? Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Okay. So, if there's no more questions, I'm going to move to the recommendations. Are we? 2.1 is note the additional external investment. Are we happy to do that? No. Yep. 2.2, agree the following applications to the Town Centre Living Fund. That's at 2.21, the reallocation of 100,000 awarded to Cunningham to Building Craftsman for Park Place investment in Lockerbie. We agreed on that. The 2.2.2, the 63,000 to Dumfries High Street Limited to progress the mid-steeple quarter. We agreed. And 2.2.3, are we agreed with the one proviso that David has recorded his dissent? Have we agreed with that? Yeah. Jane?
Well, I think we should hear the reasons for the dissent. You have to give reasons in order that members might wish to support that. So one has to have reasons for it so that we can consider whether or not we wish to join with the member.
I'm actually, just a second, Ian, I'm going to ask the governance officer for that, because my understanding is that any member can record dissent at any time. They don't have to have a seconder. Right?
Sorry. In terms of standing orders. Dissent would be recorded in the minute being put, as it would be a motion that was put forward having failed to secure a seconder. In terms of the motion that Councillor James is proposing, I would like to remind, I'm sure everybody's aware here, that the Council does have a duty under the Qualities Act 2010 and needs to advance opportunities for discriminated groups as well.
So what you're saying is that he would have to propose and then not have a seconder, and then he could record his dissent. Is that
And
right?
it would need to be competent.
And it would need to be competent. It's in your court.
I'm proposing an amendment or proposing an motion? Amendment, okay. So my amendment is that on the grounds that this is discriminatory, I would like to, well, I'm not in favour of the allocation of 45,000 to St Bride's.
Do you have a seconder?
No.
No. In that case, it falls. So do you want to record your dissent? Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're in agreement for 2.2.3 for the St Bride's Anglican Church fund, yes, with Councillor James's dissent recorded. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, let's move on to item 6, which is the Homeless Service Draft Rapid Rehousing Transition Plan. The plan focuses on 3 key themes: 1, prevention and rehousing options; 2, temporary accommodation; and 3, housing solutions. I'm in no doubt that many of the underlying causes of homelessness are complex and successful outcomes which require a sound partnership approach. I'm sure we all want to have the opportunity to engage with this work, and that's why we're making arrangements to hold a seminar for members prior to the submission of the final plan. Before I open up the debate and see if there's any update, I think I have to say we should recognise a lot of very high quality hard work that went into this for a very quick turnaround to get to meet our obligations and the things. So, Lorna, if you can actually let all the staff know with you, Derek. Thank you for that, and I'm assuming we can all agree that. This is, after all, a key area of business for this council. Now, Lorna, is there anything you need to add to the report, or are you happy to go straight to questions? Okay then, so I'm happy to go straight to questions. Ian?
Just a quick one. I just wonder, Lorna, if you could outline what the relationship is between yourself, the council, yourself representing the council, and the Health and Social Care Partnership in regards to this, because obviously there's clear themes and relationships here. I just wonder if you could outline that, please.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. It's been an evolving process. I'd be quite confident in saying at this point in time we'll have a good relationship. The Health and Social Care are actually developing, and I think I've mentioned it in the Rapid Rehousing Transition Plan, a particular needs strategy. And both myself and Strategic Housing are part of that strategy group. And with some of the proposals that are within this plan, we're actually being able to feed into that particular needs. And we've actually had recent meetings about actually taking some developments forward as a joint and partnership approach. So I'm quite encouraged that actually the relationship we've got is building, and from the officers that I'm working with there, they're very positive and quite supportive of the work we're doing.
Ian, just before you do, actually, you've spotted something that I didn't, to be fair to you. I'm actually wondering, at 2.3, when we get there, if that members' seminar could be extended to members of the IGB. Yeah, if we can't do seminars together, how on earth do we go to deliver services together, I think is the thing. But I'll let you back in, sorry, yeah.
No, thanks very much. I would certainly support that. But I think probably what I was hoping to hear as well, and probably will hear, is the potential benefits. I think the Health and Social Care Partnership, the council, that relationship's building, it's becoming more positive. But there's obviously potential benefits. So I just wondered if we could have maybe touched on that as well, and I think in that good relationship it is positive, but what are the potential benefits that will come from that?
Yeah, absolutely, Lorna.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, I think what we've identified very early on is the client group we deal with is very much the same. So when someone's either at threat of homelessness or is actually homeless, they tend to use health and social care services. They're, frequent attenders at accident and emergency, doctor's appointments, access to drug and alcohol addictions goes up when someone's at crisis in their housing. So we definitely see if we can address people's housing needs and use homeless prevention, that would help health and social care. So there should be a benefit to both sides of the service, actually, if we can, we're never going to resolve, but actually do much more joint work about prevention. And that should reduce the need for both our services.
Can I assume that, like say, through care from the prison, for example, is in exactly the same position? We're in constant contact, just for reassurance? Yes, thank you. Anyone else? No. In that case, then I'll go to the recommendations. We're asked to agree the content of the transition plan submitted to the Scottish Government on 27th of December. So that's retrospectively, of course, because it had to meet a timeline. 2.2, to agree that the funding allocated by the Scottish Government for the development of the plan, and the 2.3 to hold a members' seminar on the Homeless Rapid Rehousing Transition Plan. And with your agreement, I think we should open it up to any members of the IGB from both sides of the IGB, including the NHS members, if they want to come to that. Can we arrange to get that to Julie White's team? So that, yeah, okay, thank you very much. Okay.
Voting and non-voting, or advisors, so to speak? Voting and non-voting, or voting and advisors, all members?
Well, I think we can actually leave that up to the IGB to decide, but yes, it's the invitation to the IGB, so whoever the partnership want to send, I would suggest, and the voting members, and obviously there's some members in the room here who are substitute members, as well as full members, so yeah, absolutely. I think as wide an audience as possible, Ian. Yeah, not fair? Okay, thank you. In that case, thanks very much, Dan. Okay, we move on to item 7, the Gypsy Traveller site improvements. The purpose of the report is to update members in relation to the Gypsy Traveller sites at both Cullen and Glenluce. I have to let members know I recently visited the Cullen site and have taken the opportunity to actually engage with the residents. Today's report allows us to consider the actions we can take to address the concerns raised by the Scottish Housing Regulator. And Jamie is here to answer any questions. I think I need to be quite clear here is that there was a meeting, a ministerial meeting, which took place last Wednesday, that I was invited to by the Cabinet Secretary. It was called at their behest. It wasn't our meeting, and I do know that the ward members were made aware that and none of them took up the opportunity to come for the walk around. Part of the outcome of that, and I don't want to cut across what the officers are going to say, is that there are negotiations taking place with the housing regulator about a way forward for Cullen. Right, so I would like to, at this moment, let's get the Glenluce site out the way first, then we can have a discussion, as much as we can discuss today, about Cullen. So if we can focus on Glenluce first, and then we can look at Cullen after that. Okay, Ian?
Thank you, Chairman. In that case, it's paragraph 361, referring to Cullen. I say one of the proposals to reduce the number of pitches from 14 to 7. What I don't understand in that is that this is going to tackle the level of provision to ensure that Gypsy travellers that form unauthorised encampments can be offered more appropriate accommodation. We seem to be reducing it and yet saying it's going to be available for more people. Also, one of the, not to mention Cullen any deeper than that, but one of the things in there, it may also be able to accommodate some of the residents from Cullen, as mentioned in this particular part. There seems to be a contradiction there. We're reducing the capacity, but increasing the demand.
Yeah, because we're talking about the Glenluce site, that's referred to in 3.6.1. Jamie?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, the proposal put forward to members is that Glenluce is reduced from 14 units down to 7. The 14 units that are currently on the site are very small. They are semi-detached units, and a knock-through of those buildings will allow us to meet the minimum site standards. the reduced level of provision, we currently have 2 long-term residents on the Glenluce site, and that has been the position for quite a significant time now. The nature of encampments is they do tend to be moving through the region and not looking for somewhere to settle on a long-term basis. While we are obviously looking at reducing the number of pitches here, it would offer a short-term solution should an encampment arise in the region where somebody was looking to just be here for, say, a week. We can offer them a pitch at Ballocket at Glenluce, and then this helps to get them into good quality accommodation, and that they are not causing any disruption to the local community where the encampment may occur.
I notice in the report it says that there have been 23 recorded encampments. I take it that's not 23 different groups of people. The same people may be moved from one encampment to another.
The encampments that have occurred, the 23 encampments, there has been some encampments that have been repeat people, but in the majority they are different travellers coming through the region. They aren't necessarily repeating. They're coming through for a short period of time, often on their way somewhere else, or to carry out some work in the area. So they are potentially looking to get accommodation on a short-term basis.
I do have some concerns about reducing the number of encampments, especially when we've yet to make a decision on the other site. I think it's maybe just a bit premature for this today.
Yeah, but I think it's manageable. We'll not go into the two, compare the two at this moment in time. Graham, you wanted in?
Thanks, Chair. Obviously, we're not mentioning Cullen at the moment. Obviously, there's Glenluce. What about other local authorities and that? Obviously, how many sites have they got, say, in Midlothian or Edinburgh, Scottish borders and that? Have you any information on that? Obviously, we've got 2 sites in Dumfries and Galloway, one in the west and one in the east of the region. So just wondering what other local authorities are, so we can benchmark it against it, of the number of sites. I don't mean the number of units.
Your point's well made, and I'm going to get Jimmy to answer, but we did get some information at the meeting, didn't we, about where we were and what in terms of compliance, but I'm not sure, is that in public domain, the information you've got? Yeah, Jamie, yeah.
So across Scotland there's a total of 27 sites run by a mixture of registered social landlords and local authorities that are required to meet these minimum site standards. The regulator published a report in October highlighting the findings of an exercise they carried out to see who had achieved the minimum site standards. Of those sites, 14 had failed to meet the site standards, and they're actively engaged across the region. The councils that have failed have also been mentioned in the report and were invited to attend the ministerial meeting that Andy alluded to that was held on Cullen's site.
Anyone else, sorry? No questions? In that case then, oh, sorry, Ian, yeah.
Just because Ian's raised it, I think it's legitimate, and if as we progress, I just suppose there's a real risk there, for what I hear for what Ian's saying in regards to recommendation 2.1. If that was to be agreed, we're being asked to agree that. We're going through quite stringent budget processes at the moment. Potentially nearly £8 million worth of pressure from another site, depending how we develop that. Is it right that we actually go forward? I think what Ian's saying at this moment in time, is it? I think if it's advice for yourself or government's advice, because of the level of risk, should we actually be, maybe that's the point you've got to come to now, should we actually park on that at the moment before we make future investment in there until we realise what the whole picture is across Dumfries and Galloway? At least, maybe if we set that to the side, we should at least discuss, I think, the wider implications of the second site at Cullen, just so we fully understand if there is any financial pressures. I think if we're doing our job, our role right as councillors scrutinising this, okay, we may well need, at the end of this meeting, we may well need to invest the £338,000 as being shown to us here within the report, but actually it's how do we actually phase that in and go forward. I think we have to, there is a risk there that we'll make a decision without knowing the wider implications. I think Ian's touched on that.
There's a bigger risk if we don't abide by the instructions of the regulator.
Well, that's a fair point, and Chair, but I think that's not been explained to us.
Excuse me, can you talk over, please, Ian? I was still speaking, yeah, because we've had assurance from the Section 95 officer that that can be accommodated in the current strategic property plan, right? So I think we'd be very careful what you're doing here, but it also would do, it would make us go 50% of the way towards meeting the regulator's demands, right? Because that's what they are. They're not asks. We're being told to improve them, bring them up to tolerable standard. So what I'm trying to get here, I'm kind of looking at Jamie here because, and Jim, because that was exactly the tone of the meeting between the regulator and the ministers and the other officers in the room from other councils. Do you want to add anything to that, Jamie? No?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, quite clearly the Scottish Housing Regulator has set out the standards they do expect. The recommendation we're presenting to members today is that this is recommended for provision within the capital investment strategy that will be agreed at, or will be considered at full council on the 28th of February.
I'm going to ask for governance advice here, and I've kind of dumped this on you, but what takes precedence here? An enforcement notice from the Scottish Housing Regulator, or a member putting forward something about not spending the money at the capital programme?
It's not, I said, if I said that, I didn't mean to say that. What I've said is, should we be considering, depending on the format that you're taking, should we actually be agreeing recommendation 2.1 before we look at the rest, or we got because there might be a holistic view we have to take, and that's what I'm asking. So what I'm saying is that if that was, you outlined your procedure to start off with, let's cover this this base first, is what you said. So from that perspective, I've took on board, have we actually considered this first? So I'm saying I think we should be wary and actually consider all the recommendations in a one. So we shouldn't be just cutting this one off before we actually see the fuller picture. I'm not saying we shouldn't invest it, or recommend to full council that they consider it as part of the budget process. All I'm saying is that actually, let's know, right, okay?
So I don't need the governance advice because that's clear what you were saying. Right, well, what I'm getting at here is that if we start to go now into look at Cullen, right, the process for Cullen, right, is going to have to be a drawn out slightly longer term for the process for Glenluce can be agreed today, and that remedy could be put in place, right? Do you seriously want to risk the wrath of the housing regulator? But just for it to make a point here, Ian, I think that's because this is what it's coming to. Sorry, just a second, Ian.
It's actually on the same point. I'm not suggesting that we don't eventually get to this stage. What I say is that we shouldn't get to this stage right now until we've discussed the others. One of the options for the site that you don't want to mention could possibly be, do we actually need two sites? We don't know that. We haven't discussed that yet. I think it's far too early to go to this recommendation. I think we should, when the discussion's finished,
no time did I say we'll take this recommendation first. I said, can we discuss them first, right, and then move on to Glenluce, and then move on to Cullen. That's what I said. I didn't say we make the decision. Can we discuss that first and then move on to Cullen? Right?
Chairman, that's not how it came across, but thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's just to make absolutely clear to members that the standards were due to be in place in June last year, June 2018, and the Council is currently in breach of its regulatory requirements, and that was made clear in the meeting with the Minister and the Scottish Housing Regulator, who are requiring the Council to take action with immediate effect. That was the description that was used, and I think members need to be clear about that position.
I think it makes it clearer, Ian. We'll start talking about Cullen now, what we can discuss about Cullen, right? Because then we go to and if I've misled you, I didn't mean to, because what I was saying is let's get the discussion out of the way, keep them separate, and then come to the recommendations at the end. So we're now talking about Cullen, unless it's a general point, David. Okay.
In a funny way, because if one were to take a view with the other site that we didn't need it, I'd just like to ask whether it would be sensible to invest a little bit more in Glen Luce. Could you just comment, nothing binding, please?
I think we're not going to make a policy on the back of a fact packet. This is the figure it came back with. Yeah, because we've not got detailed breakdown, and it's unfair to ask officers that question. Okay, right. Let's now discuss what we can discuss about Cullen. Right, bearing in mind, we're still in negotiations with the housing regulator about timescales and everything else, and no doubt the officers can tell us a bit more about that. Okay, we're ready to go. Right, who's first to go? Graham.
Thanks, Chair, again. Obviously, now we're discussing about Cullen. Obviously, Councillor Blake raised it about, do we really need two sites? If I obviously had the questions from the officer, the answer from the officer there, a number of sites across the Scotland. I just wonder if we need two sites here. If you're looking at the report here, reading the report here, Cullen's got a history of very, very soft ground. It's on peat and whatnot. And I feel, do we need this site, or should we be looking for a new site? There's issues there, long-term issues in this site. I think it needs to be addressed.
I absolutely take the point. When it came to 2.3, I was going to outline all the options available to the council, right, which would include anything, right? It was a blank canvas for officers and the people who live there. Let's forget it's their homes, right? Don't forget that. Right? There are people who have lived there and contributed to this community for a long, long time. Okay, so this is not somebody who's just arriving. Right? And I would hate to see what would happen to the school numbers at Cullen Primary School, for example, if the children for that site weren't there. So be really careful for what we ask for here, because these people who are living at Cullen are actually contributing, and I think we need to stop the rhetoric about pigeonholing them into. I'll be careful what I'm saying. Right. So, is there anything given that question, would this be part of the plan if you were to get the mandate from us to look at all the options that you'd be looking at? What options, for example, could you be looking at?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, obviously, we're looking at all the options that are available to the council on the Cullen site. To go to the point about the demand for the sites, obviously, Cullen is a very popular site. It's extremely popular with the Gypsy traveller families because of the proximity to the school. We mentioned in the report that there is demand to be within easy travelling distance of Dumfries because it's our regional centre. It's an area for employment for them, and obviously access to services, including the main hospital. It's something that the Gypsy travellers really struggle to do, is access public services. And we're looking to provide a site within the Dumfries area that can then allow them to improve their health options, as good quality accommodation. And as we said in the report, there is an active waiting list for the Cullen site at the moment.
Thank you. Matthew?
Can I just ask you, you mentioned that 27 camps around Scotland, is that correct? So there are some local authorities that don't have any at all. And is there an edict that states that all local authorities should have one, at least one or two? Or?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, there's 19 local authorities that provide sites, and some of them are provided via a registered social landlord. There is an expectation, obviously, that all councils assist Gypsy travellers in whatever way possible to access public services and improve their health outcomes. They are defined as a distinct ethnic group and protected through equalities legislation. So all councils are working to try and improve outcomes for Gypsy travellers.
David again.
Well, hardly again. It's the first time I've spoken about this particular site, but thank you for your indulgence yet again. I've jotted down statutory, moral and financial aspects that probably one needs to consider here. And as I understand it, we have a duty to facilitate some sort of place where travelling people can visit, and probably not necessarily a duty to have two places. morally, having enjoyed an itinerant lifestyle myself, I quite understand the joys of freedom and moving around and the open road, etc. And we're not exactly dealing with a sort of nomadic people here that have remained unchanged for centuries. They've evolved as well in the way they move. And I do understand there's a certain culture to be maintained there. We have a duty to do that. But as their culture has changed, so has their means of mobility. So they no longer are in the horse and cart where they're needing a field or something to stop in every few miles. So the distance between Glenluce and Cullen is not what it was. So 67 miles, exactly. So probably 1 or 2 hours, depending on what the size of your caravan is. Financially, people have taken on the John Cleese question posed in the year zero: what have the Romanes ever done for us? This morning, but we don't have to go into that detail because we don't have this money. I think the figure mentioned here is about £8 million. We have not £8 million, not £1. We have minus a few £100 million. So for me, it wouldn't come into question to proceed with this particular project. Finishing off with a question, I had a member of the public. I promised that I would ask this question, and he was, well, what about the council-run sites which are closed now and again during the winter? Can they be opened up for travellers for their benefit? Thank you.
I don't know if you're able to answer that. It's a different department, isn't it? Do you want to answer it? Yeah.
Yeah, the caravan sites that you're alluding to are obviously for tourists. We're looking at settled permanent accommodation, taking on board your points about Gypsy traveller identity. It's part of their culture in their past that there has been an element of travel. A lot of the people who live on our sites are there year round. The quality of the accommodation obviously has to meet minimum site standards as set out by the Scottish Government, now being looked at by the Scottish Housing Regulator. These will be very different from the standards required on a tourist caravan site.
I'd like to ask that, should it be higher or lower? And on the point about the definition as the ethnic minority, do they retain that when they cease to travel? Are they still travellers?
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. It's just really when we're discussing about outlining all the options and discussions over this side of the room about whether one is necessary rather than two. I was just hoping that and asking if we are outlining all these and looking into all the different options with really heavy, robust consultation with the actual residents. I mean, Cullen, we've got a lot that actually live there. They're not travelling about. They mostly live in there, and the contribution they do to that region, that area, and that school and everything. Are we making sure that they are part of this consultation as much as possible?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, as part of the options report that will be brought back to a future meeting of this committee, the views of the Gypsy traveller community will be taken into account. I think what the report is trying to set out is that it is clear that the cost of bringing the site at Cullen up to the minimum site standard is by all means pretty expensive, and the purpose of the options report that will be brought back in front of members will be to look at different ways of achieving the site standards. That will include a range of considerations, for example, looking at alternative provision, where that may be, taking the views of the Gypsy traveller community into account, examining sites currently in the council's ownership, maybe examining potential options in the private sector. It's those types of considerations we'd be looking to bring back to members. But what's clear in their early consultation with the Gypsy traveller community is that they would prefer a site somewhere in the vicinity of Dumfries, because it's a major centre of population, is a concentration of services that they the access, particularly health services. And I think the options report would be looking at those considerations and how maybe an alternative provision could be made in and around the Dumfries area. But ultimately would be a member decision in terms of what was the preferred option that was taken forward. We would simply enable that discussion.
Absolutely. I've got Ian and then Jane.
Thank you, Chairman. That was my point earlier, that because we don't have this option yet, and they will come forward to presumably the next meeting, the £338,000, I understand the legal responsibility that we've got to bring the Glenluce site up to standard, but part of that is reducing it from 14 to 7. Where it actually mentioned, I'm not saying about whether Cullen needs to close or remove, but part of this report actually says this site could provide alternative accommodation for some of the residents of Cullen, yet we're reducing it from 14 to 7. That is my concern.
Okay, it's a fair point, but that's like decanting the house in Glasgow and decanting the people of Edinburgh. Seriously? That's exactly what that is. It's the same distance.
I think we're in different wavelengths here. Now, I'm just saying that if it's mentioned that reducing it from 14 to 7 is going to improve the provision of sites for people on unauthorised sites, and then further to that, for some of the residents of Cullen. Now, the report's saying that, it's not something that I'm saying it, but I think there's a conflict there.
Just a second, because I want to bring the officer back in, because my understanding what the officer said is reducing down there. One was because the improvements required in some of the sites were too small. Jamie, can you actually give us the factual situation in terms of why we're coming from 14 to 7? Because I think there was a physical reason, Ian.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Within the minimum site standards, there is an expectation of certain accommodation sizes that just cannot be met within the current sites. The pitches do require to have certain elements of storage in there, amounts of space for cooking, and obviously we want to ensure that these accommodations are high quality. The pitches at Glenluce currently are extremely small, very cramped, and there's not a lot of room. The storage is not even within the current pitches on these sites. So there is a need to look at making these units bigger, and this is the most cost-effective option.
Okay, Ian went back in, and then I've got Jane and Ian Crowthers.
Yeah, thank you for that explanation. Can I ask one final point in that case? That should these be reduced to 7, is there sufficient land capacity that should there ever be a bigger demand that extra sites can go in?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. The Glenluce site is a large greenfield site. It has got a lot of space on there. This is looking at a cost-effective option which involves renovating the existing pitches, but there is a significant amount of land at that site.
So just kind of clarify, so if we were to have a phased approach, if we were to do this now and we find it's insufficient, we can actually grow that site, for lack of better words, yet make it bigger. There's enough land there, Jamie, for that to expand if need be.
There's certainly potential on that site that should it need to expand.
Okay, Jane and then Ian Crowther.
Thanks very much, Chairman. Well, I think the discussion that we've had has been helpful, and I thank members for asking all these questions. I am satisfied that the amount of money in 2.1 is actually not going to be wasted, if you see what I mean. I think that's the critical thing that we really wanted to pick through, and I think members have probably satisfied themselves by questioning the officers that we have succeeded in making sure that that is the case. I'm also satisfied that we are going to receive more information about whether or not we are going to make proper investment in the proper places. That's what members want to know. They want a full report. So with that, Chairman, I suggest that we go with the recommendation.
Thanks very much. Ian?
Sorry, I didn't realise you were just going to the recommendations. When it does come to that, I have one additional recommendation I would like to put forward.
Want to discuss that now?
Yes, certainly. The report at 3.8 highlights the fact that the roughly £60,000 a year that we get from during the from the local authority settlement is insufficient to maintain the sites. I would like to propose that we remit you as the chairman of this committee to write to the appropriate minister asking for sufficient funds that we could fulfil our obligations under the Act. I appreciate that COSLA are trying to engage further with this, but I think we should do this report. So that's my proposal.
Thanks very much for the confidence, but I've already done it. It was already been raised at COSLA by me and some of and it was raised at the ministerial meeting last week, personally, rather than so it was all done. But thanks for the confidence in me.
Chairman, I've put down a motion. I would like that from this committee that we remit you as the chairman to write to the appropriate minister.
Okay, you got a seconder? But personally, I've no problem with writing because you've just got to repeat what I've said before. Jane, are you happy?
Well, Chairman, I mean, all power to your elbow, but just like the leader did beforehand, it's a kind of unanimous proposal and a recommendation from the committee. So if I can suggest that we do that, I think that's a good idea, particularly since we appear to be carrying a bit of burden that other councils are not. So I think we should make that point, and that's what's come out through this committee.
Well, absolutely. Maybe just for information, and I'll share this with the room. The problem we have is that because we have no housing stock, most other local authorities use their housing revenue budgets to fund this. In fact, that's where I think almost all of them have done. We don't have any houses, so we've not got that money. So, absolutely. So that there's a very strong, powerful, small lobby because the vast majority of Scottish councils still retain their houses. So, actually, I welcome, Ian, what you're saying because it allows us to go directly to the Minister on behalf of this council because at COSLA we're fighting not quite a losing battle, but there's us, the City of Edinburgh, trying to think, who are the stock transfer authorities? Scottish Borders, Perth and Ross, and so I think there's only 5 of us who are stock transfer authorities, and yes, so it would add weight to that fight at COSLA. So I'm happy. Ian?
Good to hear that you're happy to do that, Chairman. I wonder if you'd use the same example as the leader of the council and share that with the rest of the committee, even the council. She was good enough to do that. It'd be good to see the letter that you send on.
Well, I would obviously share it with political leaders before it goes. Yeah. Right. Okay. Okay. Happy with that? Okay. Let's move to the recommendations then. And 2.1. Recommend the provision is made for the estimated capital cost of 338 in the 1920 capital investment strategy to carry out improvement works at Glenluce. Agreed. 2.2. Note the estimated capital cost of 7.851 to carry out improvement works on the Gypsy Travel site at the current site in Cullen to meet Scottish Government minimum site standards. Agreed. Noted, sorry. Yeah. 2.3. Agree to receive a further report at a future meeting of this committee that will outline all the options available to the council to address the challenge to meet the minimum site standards. We agreed? Yeah. 2.4. Recommend that provision is made for the council's preferred option to be included in the capital investment strategy 1920 to address non-compliance. That obviously will be dependent on the debate when that paper comes, but we need to have it potentially in the capital investment strategy. So are we happy to recommend that? Yeah. And in 2.5, note the regulator has been informed of the further remedial actions being taken to meet the minimum site standards, and I think we could actually probably put in there and that officer engagement has already started to take place with the Scottish regulator. And then 2.6, that the chair writes to the Cabinet Secretary outlining the concerns of this committee over the costs involved in Gypsy Traveller sites. Ian?
Sorry, just a small point. Councillor Little brought it up earlier in regards to community engagement as we go forward, in regards to the report that's coming back. Have we covered that? I think she's specific in asking that so the wider community, not just the traveller site, so long as that's covered. I think it is important that the whole community of Cullen are actually involved in part of that consultation. Well,
you weren't at the IGB yesterday, but what we're asking partner groups is that impact assessments and all that kind of stuff are included as a matter of course in all reports, right? And we suggest that that should be happening. So in the 2.3, all the options will have all the options and all the relevant risk assessments and impact assessments and everything else, and how we've engaged with the public. Particularly, I would suggest the protected characteristic with the people who actually reside and use the site. So that's why it's coming to a future committee rather than tying officers' hands to one specific committee. I would much rather take a wee bit longer and get it right rather than rush it through just to keep us happy. Yep. Be comfy with that then? All right, good. Thank you very much. Right, we'll now move on to item 8, which is the welfare reform universal credit. The report provides members with an update on the rollout of universal credit and local impacts. The report also highlights recent changes to universal credit, as well as the latest position with the Scottish Welfare Fund. Paul is here to take any questions with Harry Hay. I'd be happy, just if you anything want to add, has anything happened in the last couple of days? Or?
I've got the, up-to-date position for applications in January, if people wanted to know.
We can cover that when we come, yeah. So are we happy to go straight to questions? Here's the first question. Have you any updates? Have you updated figures for us?
Yeah.
Can they be shared with members of the...
They would...
Let's stay with... that can be circulated to members after, I suggest, because it's not in the papers, right? So we can deal with what's in the papers and then come back to that later. Yep. But Paula can actually circulate that around all the committee afterwards, so for the most up-to-date information. Okay, so we're in questions on what's in the report, yeah? Okay, Jane?
Paula, how many complaints through you, Chairman, formal difficulties recognised do we have in the rollout of universal credit?
It's a difficult one for us to answer because obviously we're not administering universal credit. We haven't had any formal complaints through the council process, and I'm not aware of any specific in Dumfries and Galloway that have gone to the DWP.
Thanks, Chair. I think I remember sitting here in June 2018 and we were looking at figures for crisis grants, and I think it was Councillor James at the time had said, oh, it looks like business as usual. And unfortunately to see, in terms of crisis grants, we've seen a huge increase in a number of our vulnerable people having to turn to crisis grants. And I think that the figures for January, as they are at the moment in the paper, just sort of highlight the damage that has been caused and the negative effects that we have seen through universal credit. I think it's really disappointing that we had various letters sent after the result of full council and previous decisions of this committee and various assurances from the UK government that there would be no negative effects. And I think that unfortunately that promise has not been followed through upon. I have a slight concern when looking at Appendix 4 and the changes to the Universal Support Help to Claim. I know in paragraph 4 of the letter to the Chief Executive it says that they would wish to make it clear that Universal Support Help to Claim will not include personal budgeting support or support of any kind as people go beyond their first payment. Am I right in saying this is saying that people who are turning to them for support will only receive the advice and that support if they are a first-time claimant? And secondly, how I'm aware that we carry out a number, particularly around the personal budgeting support. We as a council currently provide that service, and will we continue to do so after these changes have fully been implemented by the DWP?
Thank you. The first point, the Sederunt have a commission with Dumfries and Galloway Council in order to deliver advice and assistance. It's fully expected that customers presenting to them out with the help to claim process would be supported through that commission. In relation to personal budgeting support, the team of Welfare and Housing Options Officers will continue to deliver personal budgeting support to those who are at risk of or facing homelessness as long as demand allows. That service will continue within Dumfries and Galloway Council, and it also, from a previous discussion with DAGCAS, is part of a Scottish Government initiative around financial capability that's being delivered by them currently.
Okay, just a second. So, Paula, I think what we're getting to here is that if the strain on your resources come to such, will we be getting regular updates from here on in if what the strain actually is on the council resource? And I would suggest also that those commissioned areas becomes so intense, right, that it would require some other action. You know, will we be getting some sort of report back, just highlighting what the increase is, if it still increases, and what the remedies are, and how we go about it? Because that's what we mean, yeah.
Okay, so the first bit, I would say you're talking about the demand to the Welfare and Housing Options Service for personal budgeting support. We can certainly include in future reports number of referrals, number of customers we've seen, to illustrate the demand on that team. The other areas are the financial pots that we maintain, Scottish Welfare Fund and discretionary housing payments. I'm certainly not expecting to not be reporting on those. Other areas of demand would be housing options, presentations due to rent arrears, and that could also be included in reports from that area. In relation to demand on the Commission service, over to Harry.
Yeah, Harry.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. As members will be aware, as of 1st of January this calendar year, the Council entered into a new commission with Dumfries and Galloway Citizens Advice Service, and robust ongoing monitoring of that commission is absolutely integral to our work plan moving forward. These monitoring meetings take place on a monthly basis. I think it's fair to say that the type of information that we now expect from DAGCAS on an ongoing basis is more in depth than perhaps it was in the past. And one of the key messages we've had from members, including on this committee, is we need to be very clear about the joint impact all resources that are going into these service areas are having. So it's not a case about duplication, quite the opposite. What we're wanting to make sure is that collectively the offering in Dumfries and Galloway is dealing with all the issues that are detailed in this report and trying to mitigate as much as possible. And certainly my intention would be to bring back at the appropriate time detail of the impact the AIS Commission with DAGCAS is having and how that sits with services delivered by the Council and indeed other partners. I think members will have picked up from these reports, have been coming very regularly, that our team needs to respond to these UK or indeed Scottish issues on a very agile basis. You'll pick up that, for example, since we last reported it in November 2018, there's already parameters that have changed that we need to respond to, and we are certainly very mindful of the fact that we need to keep members of this committee in particular updated on that.
Okay, thanks. I've got Adam and John, but Adam, is it on the same point? Or you can't let John go first?
I fully welcome
you go first, then John, then Andrew.
I fully welcome that report coming back. I think my next question, on the same point, it is about the resources of the team. I think that we can see an increase in the time it takes to process the applications. I mean, and congratulations, I think, have to go to the entire team for keeping it under 1 day in particular. I see in December, just about a half-day turnaround for these crisis grant applications, is very admirable considering the time of year. I recall at a previous committee we had talked about there was a need to pull particularly staffing resources from elsewhere in the council to make sure that we were able to keep up to these targets. I was just wondering, is that still the case, or resource-wise, You know, is there enough? Do we need more? What's the situation?
The eternal challenge, I think, is the situation. Staff working on crisis grants can come from any area of financial wellbeing and revenues and the wider Customer Services Directorate to support crisis delivery. With the best intentions, we are keeping our head above water. I'm not entirely sure whether it's just to hear or on the tip back. Extra resources are always helpful. It just puts additional pressure on the supervision and the management of that team to keep the resources. But if I had a crystal ball and I knew how many applications I would get next month, I could tell you how many staff I would need to process it. If the volume goes up again, you know, by the time I ask and get, then we could be coming back again and again. Other parts of this report indicate the financial challenge in the benefits section because of the reduction of their caseload due to universal credit, which any staff reductions or reduction in that area then reduces my ability as a service or our ability as a service to shift people around because there's less people to shift. I hope that answers the question.
Sorry, before I let John in, so I appreciate you're like a pendulum or a seesaw in your department, and staff are working from one specific benefit area to another. So I think where my question was coming from is that what we really need to know is when that seesaw, you know, if you and I were to be either end of a seesaw, right, it would take 2 or 3 you to balance it, if you get my drift. So we need to be absolutely clear as officers, as councillors, sorry, when it comes to budget setting, for example, you know, that we're aware, because I don't want to see the really excellent turnaround times you've got suffering because we're having to go spend too much time on one particular area, and I think that's my concern, Derek, where we take this forward. I think that's probably more a statement, Paula, than a question. John, and then Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. The point put forward by Councillor Wilson was part of my inquiry to you. It's looking at page 171, and it's interesting to note that the total spend for the financial year 18-19 has already exceeded the previous year with 2 months figures absent. So we are increasing our spend per annum about 20-25%. Could I have clarification just on the working days to process? If you look at January there, you had 472 applications, each one taking virtually 0.8 of a day to process. So in terms of time taken by staff to process these, that's simply a multiplication of 0.8 by 472. So you're looking at something like 420 man days to process these crisis grants. Is that correct? It's a considerable amount of man-woman time taken to deal with all of this. I'm just wondering if this must be putting pressure on other aspects of the department.
Generally, the 0.8 days represents the time from the submission of the application to the time of payment. When we take applications over the phone, we make decisions instantaneously and process straight through. When customers apply online, then by the time we get to their application, then the length of time it takes us to deal with that, the clock has started ticking earlier. A crisis grant takes anything from an hour and a half, or if I start at the bottom end, 45 minutes to an hour and a half to process, taking into account all the vulnerabilities of the customer, making the award and processing that through. When you've got a team working at that maximum capacity, there does reach a point where you're not getting 8 applications a day. That's why it goes to an hour and a half. So you're looking at six or 7 applications per member of staff per working day. And that's why the increasing demand starts to meet in the team, because if we can't clear a day's work in a day, then the days to process just get longer.
That was exactly my point, John, and I think I'm getting it. Hey, Andrew?
Thank you, Chair. It's more of an observation on Councillor Wilson's statement earlier on. On page 169, when you look at the total number of claimants to crisis grants, you'll see that it stagnates between 390 to 440 claimants a month and hasn't really gone up or down kind of stagnates apart from one maverick kind of claimant number in August 2018. So I'm not sure what table he was looking at. However, I've got another question, well, I've got an actual question in the sense of homelessness. When someone presents as homeless and they're put into temporary accommodation, now this is something I'm dealing with in Stranraer at the present minute. When they go into a private temporary accommodation, the private temporary accommodation, they're being told to go for universal credit rather than housing benefit. However, that's actually causing issues in the payment to the private operator. Can I get a wee bit of clarity on that, please?
The housing benefit regulations are exceptionally clear about what customers we can pay housing benefit to. Universal credit removed, I think it was April last year, temporary accommodation from universal credit because it recognised that temporary accommodation did not fit. Temporary accommodation is defined as accommodation provided by and paid for, i.e. the council as the landlord, to house people as homeless. The other definitions clearly represent what type of landlord can be defined as providing temporary or specified accommodation. Private landlords are not on that list, so housing benefit is not available to private landlords.
Thanks, Chair. Just thanks for indulging me. I thank Councillor Gypsy for pointing me out to page 169. I recall at the requisitioned full council meeting last year, there was a proposal that the Conservative members voted for, which suggested that most universal credit claimants would actually be better off compared to a legacy system. That exact table says that actually 56% of claimants are worse off under universal credit compared to the previous legacy system. So thank you for pointing me out to that information. I had unfortunately missed that while reading the papers.
I'm not sure there was a question here because I'm trying to get through the business of the meeting here today, not what happened in historical terms. But I've no doubt that political battle will take part outside. I don't think it was a question actually there for Paula. Has anybody else got any more questions? In that case, then I'm moving the recommendations. Are we 2.1 happy to note the current position with the Scottish Welfare Fund and agree to appropriately consider this as part of the 2019-20 budget development process? Great. Thank you. 2.2, agree to continue the current discretionary housing payment policy set out at paragraph 3.4.2. Happy agree. 2.3 is agree the Council's approach to address the reduction in the administration subsidy from the Department of Work and Pensions. That's set out at paragraph 3.6. Happy with that? And then 2.4, note the political groups may wish to consider making supplementary financial provision in support of Scottish welfare funding as part of the Council's budget development process. That's purely advisory to each of the political groupings. Yeah. All right. So happy with that? Thank you very much. Thanks, Paula. Okay, we'll move on to item number 9, which is the assessment of the business plan from 1st of April 2018 to 30th September 2018. We've got the full gambit here. I'm assuming we can just go straight to questions? Okay, Derek wants to come in first. Yeah.
Thanks, Chairman. Thanks, members. Yeah, I think 2 or 3 things just to highlight. Firstly, you would normally have, and have done for the last 3 years, exception report in relation to managing absence, because we have always exceeded the target. Therefore, I would guess for probably that will go unspotted. I think it's important for managers and staff to acknowledge that for the first time in that period, we are not reporting on an exception. That's not by default, it's by the work that managers have put in. So it's just that it's publicly acknowledged that with staff, all of the efforts we've been putting in terms of healthy working lives, active maximising attendance and ensuring that we embrace mental health ambassadors in the workplace, as well as effective two-way staff communication, is certainly reaping some benefits. Certainly not complacent, and therefore would not expect that would remain, because it is a challenging target for the whole council, and each directorate performs accordingly, and as you know, that's reported to Policy and Resources Committee. But certainly important that we maintain momentum on that, and therefore a positive position. Other comment would be, I think what you're seeing now in the new business plan that you approved previously is, and we've seen it in all recent committees, particularly today's, the nature of the business we're now involved in is developing, so poverty, homelessness, community empowerment and town centre regenerations are featuring quite heavily in here, so hopefully it gives members the opportunity to just question, challenge, as you did earlier, effectively in that scrutiny role. So certainly welcome that. And just a footnote, Chairman, I'm glad that you went to Dundee to learn about regeneration, because they came here to learn about football on Tuesday night.
Was that irony or bitterness?
No comment.
Absolutely no comment. Right. Okay then. Okay, let's go. This is free and frank scrutiny of the business plan. Questions? Graham.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Chair. It's maybe a question for Derek here. Obviously, page 207, EMS inquiries dealt through the appropriate timescales and that. Obviously, you had a review, Derek. I just wonder what your findings were, and hopefully some of these things will be implemented through EMS.
Absolutely clear, as thank Councillor Bell, who's been a strong user of EMS, along with the majority of members, and therefore deserves a quality service, and he knows of my personal commitment to ensure that we work this effectively. With your agreement, Chair, I'll bring in Serena just to set out the improvement work that's underway with a working group of members, but certainly the determination to ensure that this works and works effectively remains, and the more elected members lobby and reaffirm that position, the better, quite frankly, and I certainly thank Councillor Bell for his support in that way, but through you, Chair, happy for Serena just to set out the improvement work that's underway.
Thanks. Serena, yep.
So we've continued with phase 2 of the improvement project, and that includes engaging with stakeholders from the elected member, various political parties. We've recently met and we've agreed our approach to the online training, and that'll be for each respective person who's involved in the entire process. And we continue to liaise and engage with other directorates and services to ensure that we're creating good practice and lessons learned. We have quality assurance mechanisms in place throughout the process, so that does improve that turnaround and compliance. But we continue with it, and we will report back again in due course.
Thanks. Maybe to come back in again, Chair. Obviously, you mentioned directorates and that. It seems to be always some particular problem. I having one directorate. It seems to be E&I department. No issues with planning, no issues with social service. It seems to be the one department that's coming all the time, delayed process, failing to get back to the members with the time scales, and it's quite alarming for some residents or contacting through constituency, saying that we're waiting 15 days or 21 days. I think it's quite unacceptable for this department to get away with, and we need to tighten up on this.
Rather than Serena answer that, I think that's something that Derek can take the senior leadership team of the council.
He's heard every word.
Points are well made, and indeed last week's Policy and Resource Committee noted the performance of each directorate, and therefore these issues, where there is an improvement required, are certainly being tackled at the highest level.
Thank you. Can I just ask, is there a digital platform that works in the back of a tractor when somebody makes his way round about his ward, right? Are you piloting some of this?
You're not in the driving seat anyway.
Okay, I asked for that. Ian.
Thank you, Chairman. It's Appendix 1, when looking at some of the, just lost the one I had there, things like the page 203, you've got improvement projects, the digital improvement started in April last year, due to finish March this year, current position is 0, and its status is green. There's quite a few of these where you've got absolutely, there's no progress, and yet that would appear to be what we're aiming for. That's why I'm just maybe picking this up incorrectly.
Can you be a wee bit more specific, Ian?
Yep. Page 203. That's one example. Very bottom one. You've got digital improvement.
Harry, can you take that?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, the 6 monthly performance report is up to the end of September 2018. So it captured the performance at that time. That particular project has moved on significantly since then and is still on target to be delivered by the end of March 2019. So it's simply a snapshot in time. Sometimes it's also the way the milestones are prepared, which I know if there's any time lag in reporting, it can perhaps give a deceiving picture, but that was as of end of September 2018, and we've obviously moved on considerably since then.
Okay, Ian, yeah, thanks. Anyone else? No? In that case, then we'll go straight to the recommendations. So 2.1, we've reviewed the 6-month performance. Okay, we've done that. 2.2, we've scrutinised the exception report and then consider whether the actions proposed that are adequate. And I think we've had answers to officers updating us, and are we satisfied with what's there? Yeah. Thanks. And then 2.3, agree the proposed amendments to the current business plan measures which are in Appendix 3. Right, agreed. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to item number 10. Thanks very much, everybody. Okay, this is the Community Facilities Review update and provides members with an update in relation to the Community Facilities Review, obviously. Karen's here to answer any questions with Harry Thompson. Is there anything to update, or can we go straight to questions?
Nothing to update, Chair. Happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we'll go straight to questions. No. Oh, that's short and sweet then. We'll go straight to recommendations. 2.1, note the progress has been made with the remaining 3 properties within the 18-19 review. Have you noted? Note the progress at 2.2, which has been made regarding the 9 properties within the 2019-20 Community Facilities Review. Happy to note. And then 2.3, agree to receive a further progress report at the 19th of March committee as set out at paragraph 3.21. Happy agree? Thank you very much. In that case then, we'll move on swiftly to item number 11, which is the Capital Investment Strategies Land Asset Class Monitoring. The purpose of the report is to provide members with an update in relation to the project and financial progress of the Land Asset Capital Programme for 2018-19, up to and including the 31st of December. Okay, so just so we're clear. Karen, again, will be here to take any questions, and we Harry Thompson beside her. Karen, is there anything to add to this report?
Nothing further to add to the report,
Thank
Chair.
you very much. So we'll go straight to questions. Graham.
Obviously, looking at North West Dumfries, we have the Maxilton War Memorial, and thanks to Derek's intervention there last year, where a wee bit of work was done. There's some ongoing process and work to be done within the War Memorial. Can you outline to the elected members what work's to be done in the future there? Obviously, with issues with paving slabs, with an 80-year-old woman slipped and broke her hip there last year, which didn't come, which was quite disappointing. So I just wonder what improvements we've got. Obviously, with the commemoration of the VC winner there, award Victoria Cross on August last year. So I just wonder, on the £12,000 on the budget allocated for 2018, what we're planning for this year.
Harry?
Chair, the budget provision was beg your pardon, as stated, was 12,000. We've tendered for works to significantly restore the memorial itself, and that's come in at a significantly higher amount. So that there's been provision made for that from within the non-schools capital programme as well. Additional money brought in. And the work in that, I think, will start in March. It's the same contractor who dealt with the restoration of the Burns statue. So there's significant work to remove paint from the memorial itself and then to restore it to its original condition. There's no further works planned at this point in time for the paths around the memorial, though.
Okay with that, Graham?
Chair, obviously going back on a different subject as well, looking at these gates in the graveyards, and most of the graveyards and say like the Hollywood Cemetery and whatnot, they're usually about 4.2 metres or 11 feet. Are these a standard specification gate you're putting out in graveyards for tendership? Obviously, is it it's not like a 5-bar field gate and that, or a galvanised gate. So when it goes out to procurement, is there a set standard for graveyards?
I couldn't swear, Chair, to the precise nature of the gates in each of these graveyards. I'm assuming, though, that they are of some vintage, and therefore the restoration would be to a similar standard as to what's already in place, rather than being agricultural gates.
Because looking at the figures, £4,000 to make a gate is very excessive.
As I say, Chair, some of these gates will be wrought iron, for instance, rather than just a standard modern agricultural gate. So that's why the cost is quite significant for some of them.
Yeah, I think there's some of them actually listed, aren't they? Some of the cemeteries in the walls and things like that are listed, so it'll vary from location to location, I would suggest. I've got John, the Vice Chair, and then Ian.
Thanks, Chair. It's just about the fountain in the Dumfries Town Centre. Have we any idea when this has got to go ahead? I know it's on hold with the economic development, but have we got any idea? Because it'd been good if we managed to get this more or less straight after we done the Burn statue.
There has been a application submitted for the car scheme in the town centre, of which the fountain would form an early part. That application has been submitted. I think colleagues in Ian and I expect to hear whether that's been successful either towards the end of February or into March. If it is successful, then the fountain will go ahead at a very early stage of the project. If not, then we'll need to consider other options in terms of funding it, but clearly the cars scheme would give significant scope for funding the works on the fountain.
A little voice in the distance there. Ian?
Thank you, Chairman. It's about the new Dumfries Cemetery project. Can we have an update on how the public consultation events went? I see they were to be completed by the end of January.
Yes, there were 2 further days held on Monday and Tuesday at Summerhill Community Centre. I think there was somewhere in the region of 83 people attended on the Monday, and a fair amount of interest in the new cemetery. Less busy on the Tuesday, I think. Very disappointing numbers, probably certainly less than 10 turned up on Tuesday. There were a number of people who had concerns about the new cemetery, particularly those in close proximity as residents, and officers were able to answer questions and concerns they might have had about the development. The next stage is to secure the planning permission for the development of the cemetery, and thereafter to complete the purchase of the land.
Okay, is Ian, anybody else? No, in that case we'll go to the recommendations. Just has to note the financial and physical progress. Am I right? Yeah. Agreed? Yep. Right. Thanks very much. That concludes the business. Thank you very much for the constructive debate and the sensitive way we handled some of the... Adam? Sorry, yeah.
Sorry, Chair, just in the back of some of the more rather personal decisions that have been taken today, I wonder if it's appropriate, either through yourself or through governance, to arrange either a member seminar or training and to feed that back to governance around sort of the equalities legislation and the council's obligations under that.
I don't think it should go through forward from here, but it should go as a whole. We should all be undertaking equalities. We can feed that back and arrange but rather than formally doing it through this committee. Okay? Okay, thank you very much for your time.